We all want more freedom, and a lot of us work hard now in the hope we'll feel free later. What if there was another way? A way to feel happier, more free, and confident to get better results right now. Welcome to Your Freedom Unlimited, where we share practical stories and strategies to help you show up authentically, drop your fears, and take inspired action on what matters most to you. I'm your host, Jen Ramsey. As a coach with a love for metaphysics, science, spirituality, and strategies that get results, I'll help you step away from self-doubt and create a powerful new story for your life, business, or career. Join me. Intuition versus inspiration. What are they, and is there a difference? Do you regularly tap into your intuition, and perhaps do you follow your inspiration? Do you listen to that little sound from your soul and take action on it? And if you don't, what could happen if you did? Welcome to this week's episode of Your Freedom Unlimited with me, Jen Ramsey. I am so pleased you are here. This week, I want to talk to you about intuition and inspiration, two incredible and very powerful tools that are freely available to us that I don't think we take advantage of enough. So what are we going to cover in this week's episode? Well, today I want to focus on intuition and inspiration. I want to share with you my view on what I think they are and the difference that I see between them. I'll also share with you what is happening when we're actually experiencing intuition and inspiration, and the importance of connecting into each of these very powerful tools. I'll also give you some tips on how you can tap into them more effectively. Does that sound like fun? If so, let's go. So, what is intuition? Well, the Oxford Dictionary says intuition is an idea or a strong feeling that something is true, although you cannot explain why. For me, intuition is the voice of my soul. It is about being connected enough to my higher self to hear the subtle messages and guidance from my soul that just drop in as if from nowhere and that give me guidance when I need it. I find I often use my intuition to guide me in my decision making. I use it to check in on whether or not a decision is right or wrong for me. It's almost like an internal guidance system designed to lead me on my soul's path. I also find that I use my intuition to read situations. This may be when I'm coaching or with a client in a meeting. I listen and I read energetically what is going on beyond the words and the actions that people are saying or taking. What I find is that when I do this intuitive listening, I find that I can get insights and messages that literally just drop in, that really help me to progress the conversation or the situation. I may not have actually had that information before the coaching call, but it just drops in and I know that's exactly what needs to be said in the moment. The times that I haven't followed my intuition, boy, do I know it. But then there are times that I do follow my intuition, and I have to say the results are truly magical. Let me share a little story with you. Recently, I was walking through Brisbane, the city where I live, to go for dinner. It was a very cool, windy night, and it took us about 10 minutes to walk from our car along the river to our dinner destination. When I got there, I realized a very bad thing. I realized I'd dropped a really beautiful, soft pink cashmere shawl that really feels like a cloud to wear. It really is divine. And it's so beautiful that I was extremely upset when I realized that I dropped it. So I retraced my steps all the way back to the car with no luck. And it was then in that moment that I realized, I have got to really pull into practice everything that I talk about every day on this podcast and when I'm working with people. So I consciously decided to move into accepting and allowing, despite how I felt about this shawl. So on the walk all the way back to the restaurant, I accepted that the shawl was gone and I blessed it and the person who may have picked it up. Even though I loved it, I knew that I really had to surrender and let it go. It was, after all, a material thing, and even though it was very beautiful, I really knew that I needed to let it go. So we had dinner, and I really, every time the thought of the shawl's disappearance came up, I just thought, no, let it go. Someone else is going to really enjoy it. I just said that to myself time and time again. So after dinner, we made our way back to the car. And as we were about to cross the street, I actually got some really clear intuitive guidance. And that was, go past the fig trees. And I didn't hear this message just once. I heard it really clearly 3 times. Go past the fig trees. So the fig trees that my intuition guided me to are actually a very beautiful, large, old stand of Moreton Bay fig trees surrounded on all sides by roads. They are incredibly majestic and beautiful. So I listened to my intuition and I went to the trees. And when I got there, I could not believe my eyes. There in the gutter, just beside these old trees, was my shawl. It had literally blown out of my hands. It was so light. It had literally blown out of my hands as I'd crossed the street earlier, and it had flown up the street. Yet somehow it had been caught in the gutter. It had come to rest there. So I have to say, this is just a huge lesson for me at so many levels. Certainly a lesson around acceptance and surrender and letting go. And also for the purposes of this podcast, the power of listening to my intuition. I'm so pleased I did, and it really just highlights to me again the importance of listening to that really small voice that you might sometimes hear in your mind. And sometimes we might discount that voice. We might say, oh no, that's not important. That couldn't be important, but actually it is. And so I'm really glad on that night that I did. So if that's intuition, what is inspiration? Well, for me, inspiration is the quite specific, personal and direct ideas or messages we get about actions we need to take to move our lives forward. Inspiration can be quite a specific message that I get to take an action. And what I often find is that we'll often keep repeating and repeating and repeating in my consciousness, and I find it very hard to ignore. Just for the record, the Oxford Dictionary says that inspiration is the process that takes place when someone sees or hears something that causes them to have exciting new ideas or makes them want to create something, especially in art, music, or literature. And I think you could probably agree you've heard of many people who have been inspired to create beautiful things in art, music, or literature. But I want to make it really clear that you and I can get inspiration every day in our lives as well. We just don't need to leave it to those people who are artists or musicians. So for me, again, inspiration is about listening to that still, quiet voice that says, why don't you call that person? Or why don't you research that area of art or investigate that particular class? Some people might call this intuition, but I call it inspiration. Why? Because I find when I get inspired, I find these are really specific messages that I need to take a particular action that is going to actually progress my life forward in some way. It's going to take me off the beaten path of my life. What's really important though about intuition or inspiration is that it's really important to be open and allow these ideas to come through. And there are many times I know that I haven't, but these days I'm much more attuned to it, much more aligned, and I'm really focused on letting these ideas come forward. And I find that these ideas might come forward in my times of meditation, when I'm out walking in nature, when I'm driving often, when I'm in the shower, or it can even come up when I'm in conversation with other people. So is there a difference between inspiration and intuition? For me, there is a difference. Yes, definitely. For me, the difference between inspiration and intuition is that I use my intuition to make or check in on decisions that I've made and to intuitively read situations with other people. Whereas I find inspiration is literally just that. Inspiration is a message that I get to take a specific action forward to move me forward on my path. So you might be wondering right now, what is happening when we're tapping into our intuition and inspiration? Well, my belief is, and that of many others, is that what we're doing is we're actually tapping into our higher self, our inner self or our source self. It just depends on what you would like to call it. But what we're doing is we're receiving messages that are designed to lead us forward on our soul's journey. And what I think is really going on here, if you'd like the scientific explanation, is that I believe we're moving away from the subconscious autopilot programs that we run most of our lives. Bruce Lipton, who wrote The Biology of Belief, says that 95% of our life is lived on autopilot. 95%. What that means is that 95% of our waking time is spent doing the routine things we've always done. This means we'll go the same route to work, we'll eat the same food, We'll have the same conversations and hang out with the same people and think the same things. And then we'll wonder why our life is the same routine. Or worse, we'll wonder why our life isn't the way we would like it to be. So what I believe is that when we're tapping into our intuition and inspiration, we're going beyond that autopilot. We're getting the inspirations necessary for us to really expand and live the intentions we have truly set for our lives. We're coming to a place where we actually can start to create a new course for change in our life. So, if there is something in your life you thought you would always like to do, but you've not got around to it, start listening for the sign and start listening for the inspirations that might lead you in that direction. And take a note. The other thing I find is really valuable here is to start taking a note of your intuition and your inspiration in your journal if you have a daily journal practice, to take a note of the things that are coming to your mind, because like anything else, when we're getting used to a new way of doing things, it's good to really prove to our mind what is going on. And by writing it down and remembering those inspirations, we're almost like flexing the muscle. We're creating a stronger intuition and inspiration muscle. So what does inspiration look like in practice? If I explain to you what intuition look like, what does it look like to me in practice? So I want to share with you another story of following my inspiration recently. So about 6 weeks ago, a very dear friend of mine sent me an extremely beautiful piece of music on YouTube that she thought I would love to listen to. It was Meylan Moritz, who is like an angel who sings, she meditates, she recites poetry, and plays beautiful crystal bowls. It was beautiful, but more than that, it was inspiring. I found myself saying as I was watching this that I would love to do something like that. You see, as a young girl, I loved to sing, and I sang all through secondary school. And since then, I haven't done as much singing. I might have sung at the odd party or the odd karaoke night. But I've also loved singing sacred music and mantras at retreats. So somehow on that day, when I received that piece of music, it was a combination of the singing and the crystal bowls and all of the experiences that I had previously that I found incredibly inspiring. So over the next couple of weeks, I listened more and thought more and more about the music and the crystal bowls, with the thought that I'd like to research how to play them. Then I saw my friend a couple of weeks later who said to me right out of the blue, and I hadn't spoken to her much about it, she said, "I've had a vision of you playing crystal bowls." So that was it. I really thought that's some very strong inspiration and messages coming through for me. So I decided to do some research to see what courses might be available in my area. Of course, divine synchronicity stepped in, and the very next weekend, a 4-day course covering all sorts of sound healing therapy was available. After a little research and looking at different sorts of offerings around Australia and speaking to the teacher of this course, I signed up. At one level, it seemed really crazy as I was in the middle of a really intense season of work, but at another level, I knew I had to follow my inspiration. I knew I needed to go on the course. So this was how my internal dialogue went the week leading up to the course. Part of me was feeling I was crazy, but the other part of me was absolutely crystal clear that I needed to do the workshop and I needed to do it now. So I cleared my diary and I created the time and the space to make it happen. There was really no other way forward except for that. And that was keeping on moving forward despite the back and forth in my subconscious. But the really clear message that kept coming through was that I really needed to do the course. And I'm so pleased that I did. The course was beyond beautiful, and it was what I needed at so many levels. Our beautiful teacher was amazing, and the other people in the course were absolutely beautiful as well. And since then, I've been playing with the different instruments, and last night I gave my very first group sound bath to my family. It was magical. Everyone loved it, and I loved the chance to hold the space in such a way. I felt it was a real honor. So I really thank and bless my inspiration for giving the message to really go for it with that course. So I'm just sharing this story with you now to let you know that we do get these inspirations, and it is really up to us in terms of what we want to do with them. We can ignore them, or we can listen to them. If they're really persistent, it's great to listen, and I'm so glad that I did. So I really want to encourage you to consider listening to that small voice inside you, to really listen to that inspiration and to think about how you can start to tap in and start to take action on what that voice is telling you. So the step before that, though, you might be saying is, well, how do I tap into my intuition and inspiration? How do I hear that still small voice? That's if you're not hearing it. Well, for me, there are a couple of things that we really need to do. To tap into our intuition and inspiration, we really need to get aligned, and we need to be in a really calm space within ourselves. And I find that what that means is to have a daily practice of being quiet. It might be journaling, it could be meditation, it could be prayer, whatever it is for you. But for me to really tap into my intuition and inspiration, I've really had to come to that daily practice where I'm having some quiet time out. And for me, what that looks like is meditation. It looks like some journaling and some yoga. And what I find is that when I'm in that space, I become a better listener, and I become more attuned to what is going on around me. And I become very much more attuned to those messages that are really wanting to come through from my higher self. This is also to get aligned. What we can do is we need to get into the space of the master frequencies that I've spoken so many times about on this podcast. So what do I mean when I talk about the master frequencies? Here I'm talking about those emotional frequencies of love, of gratitude, of trust, of accepting and allowing. Because what happens is, if we are in resistance, if we're feeling stressed, if we're feeling we're busy all the time, or if we're feeling fearful, then our intuition tap is literally turned off. We're in survival mode, and we're definitely not in thriving mode. So the really important thing is to look at how are we feeling emotionally? Are we feeling happy and balanced and loving and compassionate towards ourselves and others? Or are we feeling stressed and busy and a bit fearful about what's going on? What I've found is that flow of inspiration and intuition are completely cut off if we're not more on the love side of the equation, if we're not in that space and more connected to our source energy. To hear more about those different master frequencies that I've spoken about, I really want to encourage you to go back and listen to the episodes that I've mentioned. And the one particularly that I find people really enjoy is the one about acceptance and allowing. So that is episode 2. So you just need to scroll back and you'll find that wherever you're listening to this podcast. Another beautiful way I've found to tap into my intuition and my inspiration is to start a daily practice of meditation and reflection. So to help you with that, I can offer you my How to Meditate for Beginners guide, which you can access in the blog, or you can access by visiting jenramsey.com, and you'll find a connection for that there. But this guide is completely free, and it gives you 7 simple steps to create a meditation practice that you'll love. And I also give you 2 free guided meditations, because I find that those guided meditations are a great place to start. So if you'd like to dive into this space, feel free to grab that guide. And if you really want to dive into how to tap into your intuition and inspiration more deeply, I also offer one-to-one coaching and group coaching in this space. So for more information on that, just email me at hello@jenramsey.com. As ever in this podcast, it's now over to you. I'd love to see you tap into your inspiration and your intuition some more. I'd also love to hear what you think of this, so please share with me your views in your comments or via email. I always love getting comments, and they give me such guidance on what to share with you in other episodes. So thank you once again for listening, and until we speak again, take great care, and I'll look forward to talking to you again very soon. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Your Freedom Unlimited. If you like this show, please share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, subscribe, rate, and review Your Freedom Unlimited on your favourite podcast player. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can reach me directly at jenramsey.com. Thanks for listening.